All right, this is episode number 93 of the Cozy Corner of Cinema being recorded on Monday, January 8th, 2024 at 3:51 p.m. So we are now officially 8 days into the new year, and you probably would be surprised the amount of people who have already forgotten or given up on their New Year's resolution. Everybody's talking about, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to start eating better, I'm going to work on my screenplay, I'm going to work on my album, I'm going to do this and that. And they've already said, yeah, you know what, I'll get to it, I'll get to it. There's the kind of people say that at the beginning of the year, and then they never get around to it, and then the year goes by, and they're like, oh man, this year went by so fast, what the hell's going on? It's like, brother, what are you talking about? You had all that time to do it, and you just didn't, you know? It's just nonsense, man. So make sure you're staying on top of your goals, on your dreams, on whatever it is you need to achieve. Just make sure you're on top of that, man, because next thing you know, we're going to be having the same conversation again in December. People saying, oh, 2024 went by so fast. Hey, 2025, I got my New Year's resolutions there. I'm gonna go to the gym, and I'm gonna learn this skill, and I'm gonna learn a language, and this and that. And then they never end up doing it, and then so on and so forth, because tomorrow ain't guaranteed, man. So you got to live for yourself. You got to live to do what it is that you want to do and pursue your artistic and creative endeavors, whatever that might be. You want to be the next great American filmmaker. You want to write the next great novel. You want to make a music album or do painting or whatever it is. You just got to be totally steadfast and headstrong when doing it, man, because life's just gonna pass you by, and you're gonna be on your deathbed, be like, damn, I wish I had done X, Y, and Z. It's like, brother, that's on you, man. I mean, did you enjoy your life? Did you enjoy the time that you had? And if not, well, brother, unless you believe in reincarnation, that's it, man. Oh man, it's chilly as hell, man. I tell you, but it's great. It's great because at the end of the day, I'm in bed and it's cold out. You get under those covers listening to Art Bell, Coast to Coast AM radio. Oh my gosh, there's nothing like it, man. It's just so cozy. After having a long day, you get into bed, you let your eyelids be heavy, and you just fall asleep to the beautiful sounds of Art Bell talking with all these people. It's just so magnificent. It's just these little things that really kind of keep you going and really make them so special. It's just such a joy to look back on the day and see what you've achieved and what you hope to achieve for the next day, and so on and so forth. It's just great stuff. And what I mentioned in the last episode, the last episode being the Blu-ray episode, the January 2024 Blu-ray episode, which is what I will primarily talk about here, because I was talking about on that the upcoming releases of Kindergarten Cop on 4K and Conan the Barbarian and Conan the Destroyer on 4K, and the timing just worked out like great because inspired by this audiobook, which I actually just finished today, which I'll talk about as well, because I have also started this man's previous book from author Nick de Semlyn. Is that an L or an I? Semlyn. I probably said that wrong. I was listening to his 2023 novel, The Last Action Heroes, The Triumphs, Flops, and Feuds of Hollywood's Kings of Carnage. And this was just a fantastic read. This has been on my to-read list for a while, but hey, if you got Spotify, take advantage of those audiobooks, man. I mean, they're not all free, but this one was. So, you probably get plenty of good recommendations just going from one to another, man. And this was just such a joy to listen to about the ups and downs, about the feuds, about the successes and the failures of these Hollywood 80s action stars. Talks about Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Jackie Chan, Steven Seagal, Chuck Norris, Bruce Willis. I think it's primarily the ones they talk about. They mention some other actors here and there, but those are primarily the focus. And it was an incredibly engaging and interesting, I would say, read, but it was more of a listen to, just about the competitiveness of a lot of these guys. With a lot of these films coming out, it's a new wave of American action films and stuff. We're done with the '70s with the kind of grim and dour, nihilistic sort of films. And going into the '80s of just testosterone, masculine, gun shooting, just badass kind of guys. All these just memorable, great films that came out of there. And even if the films themselves aren't great, you usually some things you remember about the film that kind of makes them stand out more than I think a lot of contemporary action films, because they had this sort of quality of just that extra level of bravado and just being really like forthright, man. Because there's so many action films that come out now that you just forget about them. They're just even if the ones you like, that's all good. But a lot of these films, because they've had the benefit of time on their side, and I do think that a lot of them are just ultimately more interesting kinds of films. That doesn't mean to say they were all good. There's plenty of stinkers. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying that I think back to like, Stallone's and Schwarzenegger's and, all their big films and stuff. I mean, most of them I think are pretty good, up to a certain point. This book primarily focuses on just the decade of the 80s. It talks a little bit into the 90s, kind of where these guys' careers went on to afterwards, of just kind of the legacies that they would end up making for themselves. And but really, man, I mean, this is it's told in a very interesting way of just kind of balancing back and forth between these people. So you talk about Stallone for a bit, and then he talks about something with Schwarzenegger, and then the next section is about Schwarzenegger, and then there's a crossing with Jean-Claude Van Damme, so this and that. I mean, it's just wild, man. And the great thing about a book like this is that because there's being so many films mentioned, and so many films referenced to, it makes you want to get your own notebook and just start writing a lot of these films down, ones that maybe you haven't seen. I know there were a couple that I went under my radar in terms of I thought I had seen it, but perhaps not. And I'm also reminded of the really good ones I have seen. Just some really, really terrific films like Commando, Predator, Total Recall. They get into the Stallone stuff. I mean, they talk about like his success with like Rocky and stuff. Really kind of like I was saying before, that Sly documentary. I mean, Sly is a very inspirational person. I will say, if I wouldn't even call it a gripe. I just kind of got more of an idea that I don't think that this writer is too big of a fan of Stallone, because whether intentional or not, it does seem to be a little like every time it cuts back to Stallone, it's a fairly negative kind of portrayal of him. And I'm not denying that I wasn't there, this or that. I'm just saying that it did feel like a couple times that the writer was specifically picking out Stallone and some of his egotism. And, which undoubtedly is there. Stallone is addressing that, which I think is so interesting with the Rocky franchise going forward, sort of the highs of Stallone as an actor, and then sort of wanting to pull his career back in, pull his character back in. And to me, that's why I think Rocky V is actually one of the most interesting sequels, because it's at a time when Stallone is doing just a lot of not so great films, and his ego's out of control, and he brings the character back down to earth. And I know people kind of dog on that film, but I think the stuff with him and his son is really heartfelt. I actually like that quite a bit more than 3 and 4. I think that's a much better sequel than either of those, and feels closer to the Rocky character as in Rocky 2. I mean, I almost kind of look at it like Rocky 1, 2, 5, and then Balboa and Rocky 6. Those feel the closest to that character. And, in the Creed films as well, but I'm just saying that 3 and 4 feel so disconnected from that character, because in due part because of some things that bring up in the book of just Stallone and his fame just getting so big, and it's just, but I mean, Stallone is a guy who, is constantly doing work, he's constantly grinding, constantly, talk about all the scripts he was writing, and they wouldn't get picked up, and he had to beg to be in the Woody Allen film Bananas from 1972, I think. Actually, yeah, I think it was 1972. I mean, he has a small part in that film with no dialogue. It's really just a little bit more than a cameo. But he is in that. They talk about some of his successes and failures pre and post Rocky, and some of his fault. But I will say that when it comes to Stallone, to a lot of these guys, I mean, I always say that Schwarzenegger is the action star I prefer, but Stallone is the actor I prefer. I think Stallone's a different kind of actor, a different kind of acting performance than something like Schwarzenegger. But I think he's done so much interesting, good character work that's not just an action film. Because Cobra and all that, those are fun and all that. But I when I look at stuff like Copland, and like I was saying before, with Rocky V, just really interesting character stuff that I think kind of makes him a little notch more interesting than some of the other contemporaries of the time. But even still, the point I wanted to get to was the 3-episode miniseries on Netflix that I think was also 2023, just entitled Arnold. So yes, this is from 2023. It came out around the same time as the book, presumably, because the book is also 2023, but it doesn't say exactly the month, or maybe it does. June 5th, 2023. Oh wow, this miniseries came out June 7th, 2023. So this is the perfect companion piece to that, as well as the recent Sly documentary on Netflix. Like, after watching this, I do wish that that documentary which is only about 90 minutes or so, and feels a little rushed. I do wish that they had formatted it in a way of a nice 3 episode, because I mean this is about 3 hours in total. And what's interesting is that each episode. Let me tell you this, Fred. I don't watch TV. I don't watch any of that stuff. I don't see any benefit besides just a shallow kind of superficial level. But I mean, I understand why TV is so revered and loved, and that's fine. I'm just saying, for me, I don't have any interest in that stuff. It's just all game shows and all that stuff. But what I'm saying is that if I'm going to be watching something like this, I got to be intently interested. If I'm watching something like this, or if I'm watching Band of Brothers or something like that, I got to be totally engaged and totally into it. Something that I previously wanted to see, and not just, any and all film recommendations I'll take. I got no problem with that. But TV recommendations, you always gonna be upfront. I just say I'm not, I thank you for thinking of me in this recommendation, but I don't want to. I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, I'm not a TV guy. But with that said, so each episode of this, it talks about a different point in his life. So the first part is about him being a bodybuilder, talking about how he was perfecting his body. He's coming from this small kind of Austrian sort of area where he was just like, he sees Hercules in the cinema, and he's like, I want to be like that, man. I want to really bulk myself up and really do it. And he does, and he's like going as high as he can, winning these competitions and stuff. And now it's the next phase, which is the second episode, which is his acting career. He talks about his early kind of roles, like in Hercules in New York, and then he gets involved with James Cameron, or actually before that, he gets involved with originally Dale De Laurentiis, who they have a bad first encounter, but ends up getting into Conan the Barbarian, which kind of kickstarts his career, and then from there starts to wind out into other big. I mean, his streak for a while was solid, man. I mean, he was doing a lot of good stuff. I mean, he was doing Conan the Barbarian and the Destroyer, and then Terminator and Commando and Predator and Running Man, and Twins was a big success. Total Recall, and just film after film, and then Terminator 2, and then sort of the kind of middling off to the end of the 90s into the 2000s, where the third episode is about his political career, and he became governor of California, and he was talking about there how he wanted to kind of break down the barriers of a two-party system. He wanted to get other people's ideas involved with it, and some of the criticisms that he faced, and some of the issues. I mean, I will say that one thing that this film does, that the miniseries does very well, is that it's not afraid to address a lot of controversies in Schwarzenegger's career, either things that he said or personal issues that he's had. I mean, it's pretty upfront with a lot of it, and I think it's a good thing to really kind of put that in the forefront, because now we're looking at a guy who's not exactly at the end of his career, but he's able to look back with perspective. Because I don't know how old Schwarzenegger is now, but he's able to look back with perspective on the things, the ideas of an older man to a younger man who just wanted the success and achievement, and then when he gets older, he actually wants to do something and actually make something of himself, but still has that kind of prankster kind of joking mentality that the book brings up quite a bit. How Schwarzenegger was a prankster and this and that, but when you watch this or you read the book or listen or anything like that, it does bring in mind a lot of these films that you're gonna want to write down. You're gonna want to do a checklist of the films that are on your radar. And when I was talking recently in the Blu-ray episode, when I was mentioning how I haven't seen Kindergarten Cop, I haven't seen Conan the Barbarian or The Destroyer, but now these films are in the conscience, man, and they're making me reevaluate the films that I already enjoy so much, like Last Action Hero, like Terminator 2, like The Running Man and Commando. Just these really exceptional and really enjoyable films. And although I do wish that they had, which is like a little thing because he doesn't have any dialogue in the film, but in between Hercules in New York and his 1976 film Stay Hungry, besides the TV film that he did in 1974. He does have a very brief part in Robert Altman's The Long Goodbye from 1973. He doesn't have any dialogue, but he's just in the background there. One of the best sequences in the film. Everybody, take your clothes off. Take your clothes off, everybody. It's just great. They really kind of skim over that. But it was nice to hear the book as well mentioned early on about Stallone's softcore film, The Party at Kitty and Studs, because it was cool to see in the documentary that they actually allowed, that Stallone allowed footage of that to be played. I know he, there's the story with that where after Rocky got successful, they tried to bribe him for $100,000 to not release the film, and Stallone declined. He'd basically just go ahead and release it, I don't care. So you figure that'd be a tough spot for somebody who's now this major star and all that, and they don't talk about it in that, but I'm saying they show clips in that, but in the book they do mention it briefly about how there's this quick kind of a couple day shoot, and how he needed money for that because he didn't have any money. he had to give away his dog. He had to sell his dog, I think, and then he got the dog back. I mean, it's an incredibly inspirational story. But these just kind of guys who really went the distance. I mean, Schwarzenegger is just building up his body to be this just behemoth of a person. Stallone is constantly writing and putting himself out there. And then some of the other guys in the book, Jackie Chan, who is America kept rejecting him, and he was just like, man, I can't do this anymore. This is getting ridiculous. But he persevered, and then he does these great big films and becomes one of the biggest action stars ever. I mean, maybe the biggest, maybe the biggest action star ever. In terms of, everybody knows Jackie Chan, man. That's going to go without saying. Regardless if you've even seen any of his films, oh, that's Jackie Chan. It's a pop culture icon right there, It's just really exceptional stuff for people who are a fan of these films from this era or are just interested in this kind of the lives of a lot of these celebrities, which I normally don't give a damn about any of that kind of celebrity gossip, man. That's all nonsense, and one ear at the other. But these stories are fascinating because there's the actual context behind them with these films that we can actually watch these films differently now, knowing that, oh, wow, on this set they had this problem, or on that set there was an issue on here. It actually makes these stories far more valuable than just generic kind of, whatever pop star of the week is like, what they eat for lunch today. Oh my God, they ate kale. That's insane, man. I can't believe they ate kale. I like kale too. That's insane. It's like, there's nothing of value there. It's just ridiculous. But I also did start his other book that he wrote previously in 2019 about the 80s comedy stars. This one is called Wild and Crazy Guys, how the comedy mavericks of the 80s changed Hollywood forever. And I have about 8 hours left on this. I'm on chapter 7 of this right now. But also, I mean, it's told kind of in the same way as the Last Action Heroes book of just these intertwining sort of people. You have Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, John Belushi, Eddie Murphy. Did I say Eddie Murphy? I don't remember. And just the egos that were coming along with them, the ridiculous kind of stories, man. John Candy as well is in there, and you're listening to it, and as a listener, you're like, yeah, obviously this kind of lifestyle doesn't have a lot of sustainability. I mean, you listen to like John Belushi just being absolutely wild and stuff, and it's just like, yeah, it's unfortunate he had to die so tragically, man, die so young. But you live fast, you go fast. It's just wild as hell. But I do also need to read or listen to, whichever I get to first, the book Wired, which was about what was the full title of that? I got it right here, actually. I want to make sure I got the full title of this. It's Wired, The Short Life and Fast Times of John Belushi, written by Bob Woodward. So that'll have to be read at some point as well for context. I got to the end of that chapter today, or end of one of the chapters today. They talk about Belushi's passing a couple weeks after the premiere of Neighbors, film with him and Dan Aykroyd, which I haven't seen, but I think always kind of had this reputation of being the film where Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi kind of switched roles, switched basically what kind of roles they would be of John Belushi playing the more straight man, whereas Dan Aykroyd's playing the one with a lot of like zany kind of wild dialogue and stuff. They talk about the Blues Brothers and all that, and just again, like the Last Action Heroes book. It's all these films that you got to write down. I don't think I've seen as many of these comedies as I have these action films. I think in part because I just ended up when I was younger, I just watched more of these action films than these comedies. There are so many big comedies from this era that I just haven't seen. But at the same time, it's like people say like, oh, you haven't seen this film, haven't seen that film. It's like, brother, you can find 10 films that you've seen that I haven't, and vice versa. It ain't a contest, man. You watch what you watch from the time you got to watch it, man. But with that said, no, there's definitely some titles here in this book that I mean, a couple films I hadn't even heard of previously that I'm kind of curious of for sure. And it is interesting to kind of, what I was saying before, look at these films, these people back in context. It's sort of just the egos flying around. It's sort of like, for better or for worse, it's sort of like these people were headstrong. They were steadfast in what they wanted to do, but at the cost of whatever it is they might be. It's also these books talk about a different time in America of just of just excess and of this real kind of hardcore patriotism, and everybody's doing drugs, cocaine and stuff, and it's just a different time, But it's interesting to look at it in perspective and just sort of see like, yeah, obviously this wouldn't be a sustainable lifestyle. At some point, you can only drive a car fast for so long before you got to get gas, man, and you slow down. It's like, I want to go fast. It's like, well, brother, at what cost is that gonna bring onto your life? It's just wild as hell, man. But really excellent stuff nonetheless on both of these books, man. I'm really enjoying this book right here, and that Arnold miniseries on Netflix. Definitely worth your time if you're interested in the subject matter. Like I said with TV, is that I got to be interested in it to pursue it. If film is one thing, I got no problem watching a long film, but a miniseries or a TV series, unless I'm intently interested in it, it's just not going to happen. And you got to be upfront with that, people. You got to be honest, and you got to say, I'm not going to disappoint you and make false promises. This is what I intend to watch at the time that I have to watch it, and I'm not going to waste my life being put in a situation that I don't want to be in if I don't need to be in it. It's one thing. If you have your time to do what you want with it, if you're not hurting yourself or anybody else, you want to watch films, you want to play video games, you want to watch TV shows, you do whatever it is you want to do, man. Because you're gonna be, if you're living your life for somebody else, you ain't living your life at all, man. And I'm talking about not in a superficial way. You could say, oh, you got a job, you're working for somebody else. Like, brother, that's not even in the same comparison league. That's just a wild thing to say. But you get what I'm saying, man. I'm probably preaching to the choir if you listen to this. But check those out. Check some of these films out. Definitely one that if you're unfamiliar with some of these films to I'm sure there's probably many lists online that talk about the best kind of these films and stuff, or the most important films of like this kind of era where, like say you want to be a comedian or anything like that, you want to maybe study a lot of these guys or see, what is right or wrong, or maybe you want to be an action filmmaker or an action star, you watch these films and you see what made these so successful. They talk about the original writers of Last Action Hero. And, they would watch all these action films and they would take notes on what would happen in each of the films and sort of the tropes and the cliches. And then we get that film. And there's actually an interesting story behind there on how the production of that got kind of taken away from them. And they kind of got tossed to the side while, everybody else kind of got the credit for it. So, good stuff, though. Check those out if you have Spotify. Those are available to listen on audiobook, or you can just get the book as well. It just happened to have come up while I was needing something to read. I do wish the interface was a little bit better. That's probably my only real concern with that, is that it is a little difficult to specifically find recommended books unless you're looking for it by name. Because the Last Action Hero was recommended, so that's how I came across it. I knew about it previously. Known about it previously, I should say, but either way, that is... good stuff. There was another book that I wanted to read, also sort of about... It was, Oscar Wars, A History of Hollywood in Gold, Sweat, and Tears by Michael Schulman. That'll have to be read at some point. Hopefully that has an audiobook available, because then I can get that out of the way soon. Because I think it's much faster, I find, to listen to an audiobook than it is to read a book, because I have that time at work, so I can just listen to earbuds. My earbuds are the audiobook, but, getting out the time to really kind of properly, take in the words, reading, it's a different kind of ball game altogether, but a different rewarding kind of experience altogether. It's far more rewarding, I find, to actually finish reading a book than it is finish listening to a book. To me, that's just a long-form kind of conversation, but either way, it's good stuff nonetheless. So, moving into 1972 as well, or was this 1972 or 3? 1973, directed by Andy Milligan. This was a rewatch for me, because I had mentioned before how I was watching and rewatching some of Harry Reams's films for a writing project that I've been working on. This IMDb says 1972, and the other site said 1973, so I'm not sure exactly. But pairing the two up before they would be in Forced Entry, Laura Canyon and she was the main character in this. This is Fleshpot on 42nd Street, written and directed by Andy Milligan, starring Laura Canyon. Harry Reams comes into the film in the second half. Actually, probably the second half. I was going to say that or the third act, but I guess it would feel more second half. And you got a couple of the actors from Last House on the Left on this. Got Fred Lincoln, who is probably more known for being an adult actor. But you also have Richard Towers, who plays her lover at the beginning of the film. He played the father in Last House on the Left, and this is just such a wonderful film. I think this is just one of Milligan's best films, one of Reeves' best performance, and the chemistry between him and Laura Canyon is just off the charts, man. They work so well together. It's interesting. I was reading somebody talk about this, And they were talking about this in a kind of a peculiar way, where they had mentioned this liking to a Godard film, or like kind of like Cinema Verite. I don't think I fully agree with that. I think that's kind of a stretch. But I will say that with these character interactions, they feel so natural that even though the camera work can be kind of stingy at times. I mean, there's one sequence when Laura Canyon and Harry Reams in the back of a taxi, and the entire time the camera is at an angle in such a baffling way that I can only imagine watching this cinematically. You'd just be like, or theatrically, I should say, be like, whoa, my goodness gracious, I think I'm going to be nauseated. But we have Laura Canyon, who plays, she's playing this streetwalker, this kind of, I don't know if ever she was a full-on streetwalker, if she was a prostitute, I don't know, man. But basically, she's just kind of milling around New York at the time, and, like, if you're into, like, the exteriors of New York, the cinemas, the buildings, and all that, I mean, you're in for a total treat on this. The beginning of this film with that really memorable theme song, or that memorable opening track, I should say, it's just really the camera going down the street, and you see all the people who would have been there at that time, and the marquees on the building, the elaborate kind of marquees and the settings. It's all just so gorgeous to look at, man. It's just so uniquely its own. But she's bumming around. I mean, she just really is kind of looking for a guy to take care of her. At the beginning of the film, she's with this guy, Tony, played by Richard Towers. And, he's a good guy. He's trying to be upfront with her. He's saying, like, hey, man, if you want to stay here, that's fine, but you got to pull your weight around here. You're sitting around all day. You're not doing anything. You're not making any money. I'm fine. The sex is fine and all that, but you got to do something. And she kind of just flips out. She waits for him to leave, and then she's like, piece of that jerk, I'm getting out of here. I don't need this in my life. And she is finding herself jumping from one person to another. She meets this guy she used to know, and through some circumstances ends up meeting up again. Oh, I'm sorry. I should say meeting up with this character Bob, played by Harry Reams, and that's where the heart of the film comes in. It comes in, man, because you have these longer kind of dialogue sequences between the two of them. Now, I mean, this is an adult film, but I would say if you're not into adult films, I think this is one that you could still get with, because this is for the most part softcore with some brief moments of hardcore action between Harry Reams and Lara Canyon. But it's their chemistry that works so well in the film. Harry Reams plays such a gentle kind of character who has this sort of just loving attraction and tenderness towards her right when they meet. I mean, she's at first a little bit abrasive. She doesn't really know about this guy, but as it goes on, their chemistry is just so palpable, and it's just so great that even the moments when they're actually being physical with one another, it feels far less sleazy than you would for a title like Fleshpot on 42nd Street. Because you look at the poster and maybe you see some of the images, and I think you get an idea of it, but this film is way more of just a really solid character drama than anything like that. I mean, some of the acting, because it is a little stiff at times, and that goes without saying. It's probably going to happen with a lot of these kinds of films, but I think Harry Reams and Laura Canyon, above everyone else in the film, their acting is actually really solid. And that's what I was talking about before with Forced Entry, is that it's a good film, but the strongest sequence in that film is the scene that should work the most, which is one of the attack sequences, which is between when Harry Reams attacks Laura Canyon. Her screams and her physicality are so raw that she makes up for maybe some of the lesser elements of maybe the acting or the filmmaking or whatever it is that might be, man. Because Laura Canyon didn't really do a whole lot of films as is. I mean, Harry Reams did a whole bunch. That goes without saying. But for how good she is in this film, it's kind of wild that she didn't end up doing a bunch more. I don't know fully her story, unless she just eventually got out of acting, because her last film was in 1981 with Deadly Vengeance, but she also did The Altar of Lust with Harry Reams as well, which was a Roberta Findlay film, and actually Fred Lincoln's in that too, so interesting kind of connection there. That was with Michael Findlay and Roberta Findlay as well. And but either way, I gotta wrap this one up because I'm running out of time here yet again. But guys, thank you so much for listening. We're 8 days into the new year. It's time to make your dreams come true. It's time to get to work. It's time to just get rid of all that social nonsense. Get rid of all that nonsense you don't want to do with your life. You're talking about, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. Well, brother, it's time to make your life the way you want it to be. All right, man. Thank you so much for listening yet again, and I'll be back soon. Thank you so much.